You are now listening to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. We preserve the history and sport of hunting through curious conversation and action-packed hunts, as well as offering you tips and strategy for more successful hunts. The Hunter's Advantage podcast is powered by Out on a Limb Manufacturing. Out on a Limb is a family-owned company based right here in Oklahoma that makes tree stands, saddle platforms, climbing sticks, and so much more.
Christian, I have a quick question.
What's that?
What bites down harder, a hippo or an alligator?
No idea.
It's a trick question. The Ridge Runner 2.0 bites harder than both of them. But all jokes aside, we use these products all across the land on public or private. These help us get into any tree we want and hunt where the deer actually are.
Most men go to the grocery store for their meat, but these products help you go to God's grocery store. I have used the Out on a Limb Ridge Runner 2.0 and the Shakar sticks for the last few years hunting public land bucks, and I've actually shot several bucks out of this setup. If you want to support the podcast and get some Out on a Limb equipment, make sure to go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA10 for 10% off at checkout. Once again, if you want to support the podcast, go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA10 at checkout for 10% off. Now let's get back to the podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. Today I'm joined by a guy who's been taking a long hiatus, Jake Gaylord. How's it going?
It's the busy season. What can I say?
Probably the least busy season of the year. This man's just been spending all his time setting up his hunting spots.
Well, I did do some of that, but for the most part, it's the busy season right now. You knew this going in, so
that's what I tell my wife when it's the fall, and I go, "You know what you were getting into."
It's the same thing. It's literally the same thing, except, believe it or not, like my fall has been last year's fall. I hunted the most I've ever hunted in my life. And I'm pretty sure I've been more busy the last month and a half than I was all last fall.
So do you think you're going to have another fall where you get to hunt as much?
That's the way I set it up. That's the way I set it up, because I try to get as much done as I can. I try to fill that bank.
So you can deplete it and keep yourself motivated.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm not saying I completely quit work, but let me tell you, I'm self-employed and the work I take on is just the base level. Like, hey, if you need an extra job done, wait until December or January. That's where I'm at.
There you go. I don't blame you one bit. So we do have some exciting stuff coming up. So right now we're going to start a new series on public land hunting. If you've been following us for a while or you listened to the podcast any last summer, we did I think it was an 8-part series. Is that right?
It was long. Yeah. Yeah. It was something like that.
It was quite a few. We did a public land 101. We called it a mini series. It should have been called a mega series because it had several episodes. I don't know if it was 6 or 8 episodes, but we talked about a ton of things. We talked about boots on the ground scouting and ethics and all those sorts of stuff, regulations. We got into all the stuff.
I think it was one of our more well thought out podcasts we've ever done.
It was between, right now it's between that one or the Deer Science series. Those are the two ones that I think have been really, really well thought out. And we wanted to do a public land series before the season started again, but do it a little bit differently. Maybe talk a little bit more about our hunts. Instead of keeping it at a 30,000 foot view, we're going to get into some stuff we've learned through hunting.
The nitty gritty.
And so we're going to call this series the How to Hunt Public Land Bucks, and we'll keep it fun, informational, and we'll tell a lot of stories. But it's this series is going to have 5 different parts, and we'll walk through them 1 episode per part. So this one's going to be about hunt planning. Then we're going to have one about scouting, hanging hunting on the ground, and then some general strategies and ethics. So as we get into that, I'm excited for this series. Are you ready for this one, Jake?
Yeah, just for the viewers who, let's say there's a longtime listener who remembers the old public land series, what's going to be different about this one?
So I feel like in the last one we talked a lot. We talked a lot about high level, like this is how we would hypothetically do it, and this is how to get started doing these things. And this one we're going to talk more about our personal experiences, like how we actually do this. And when in hunt planning, how do we make decisions? What considerations do we have in hunting
Money.
on the yeah, it's easy one.
That's a good one.
In scouting, how do we actually scout? Give some examples on how we do it. So I think that's going to be the main difference. Is we're going to get into the nitty gritty of how we do it. Whether that's for better or for worse, we'll see. But we're going to do it. Let's talk about hunt planning. I always start with, what are your goals? When you're, and I think that's very, very important to start with, because as people know, the South is different than the Midwest. The Midwest is different than the. Sorry. I just got controversial already. I did. I mean, do you not think that's?
Is this rolling right now, or
yeah.
Are we still? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, dude, it is. But man, that's a touchy subject that I feel like a lot of people ain't ready for.
Well, let's be honest.
But it's true. It is true.
Let's be honest. If your goal is, hey, I want to go have an opportunity at shooting a 150-inch buck on public land, I wouldn't be sending you to Alabama. That wouldn't be my first choice. Would it be yours?
I mean, I would rather go to Florida, I think, than Alabama. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, there is a difference. I mean, just from let's take on neighboring states, Oklahoma versus Kansas. What did you see last year from the size difference from Oklahoma to Kansas on public land?
It's a big deal. I mean, 30 yards from public land, I saw probably a mid 160s just standing out in a milo field. I've lived in Northeast Oklahoma. I lived there for almost 20 years, and I've never seen a buck that size ever. You go a few hours north, and here I saw a 160 right next to public land, 30 yards away. You were just driving around, and you saw a 150-inch buck out in the field.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like those aren't things that you just typically see in that part of the state.
Well, not only that, but like rack sizes. Yes, I agree with you. But not only that, just the body sizes as well. Like you look at tracks and stuff. And I remember taking this video on my phone, and I'm pretty sure it's like on one of the shorts on, whether that be Facebook or YouTube or whatnot. But I was in this bean field looking at tracks going around these edges, and I swear this thing looked like an elk track or a big old cow track. Like this thing, I set the trail cam that I had with me beside the track, and I promise you, it was maybe a quarter inch shorter than the trail camera on each side. And I was like, this is a big old boy.
They're different. And you have to, this is consideration like that we would make. Like, let's say you and I were, hey, we want to go shoot a Pope and Young on public land. That's going to change that's going to immediately change. Our goals are going to change where we can go to do that or not. You can get it done in multiple places across the country. And I think that's what makes a lot of people's hunting resumes pretty impressive. But if you and I were going to go do a hunt and that was our goal, we both want to shoot one on public land, Pope and Young, I'd immediately be focusing more on the Midwest than I would if, hey, we want to go shoot a decent buck and maybe make it a little easier.
You had some news you told me today. I forget the context of it or who the friend was that was saying this, but apparently there's a 20-inch difference between deer, like the average deer in the South versus the Midwest. Is that correct?
Yeah. I don't know if I should out him. Anyways, he didn't have social media. Nobody cares. I was talking to my buddy Jake, and they've hunted Kansas for a long time. I'm pretty sure they've hunted Iowa before too, Missouri, different places. And their theory, and they've owned land in Kansas too, was on average a buck in the South versus a buck in the Midwest, there's going to be about a 20-inch difference. So a 150-inch buck in Southern Oklahoma is going to be equivalent to a 170-inch buck in Iowa, or Ohio or Illinois, pick your state. And I think just anecdotally from the friends that I have across the Midwest, that seems to be true. Like people that haven't been hunting very long, you see them sending me pictures of 170-inch deer. And I'm like, brother, I've never seen a deer like that in my whole life.
So again, I'm not talking any crap on these guys because I mean, I've never talked to them personally, but from just like DMs and the friendly comments on the YouTube channels, the Creek Kings, if you guys haven't seen them, go check them out. They're based in Ohio, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't seen one of their previous videos, you kind of live under the rock because that thing is going crazy. They had chance of shooting at 3 booners in 1 year in Ohio. 3 booners, and these things, I mean, they're booners. They're giant deer. They had 3 opportunities at booners in 1 year, and we were talking about this just a little bit ago. How many booners, legit booners, have you seen in your life in Oklahoma?
I think I've seen on the hoof 1.
And how many years have you been hunting?
Jeez, dude, 18 years.
So let's just say 18 years you've been hunting. Let's say 12 years you've been hunting, like where you actually somewhat knew something, correct?
Yeah, probably.
So, let's even go lower. Let's say a decade. Let's say a decade of experience. You've seen 1 legit booner hunting public and private on Oklahoma. Whereas these guys, I'm sure, they've did their due diligence and they worked their butt off trying to find and locate these 3 deer. But there's been multiple years, probably 5 years now, where we run 20 plus cameras on various pieces of public land, and that's not even including our private pieces, which I would say good private pieces on here in Oklahoma. And we have not gotten 1 picture of probably a legitimate booner out of that whole decade. And they had 3 in 1 year that they got shot opportunities at, not just pictures, shot opportunities.
Yeah, it's different. It's very different. And I think that's something you have to consider when you're picking where you're hunting. If your goal is to shoot a booner, don't come to Arkansas. Don't do it. Yeah. If I'm just saying that I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't advise you to do that.
We talked to quite a few people. And what do a lot of those Midwest people say whenever they're like, hey, you ever going to venture down to Oklahoma? Or when we talk about our experiences, most of them say they don't have many experiences in Oklahoma or any of the more southern states in general. Why is that? Because people don't leave big deer. I wouldn't either. Like if I lived in Ohio or Iowa or something like that, I wouldn't. Like the chance of me leaving, not going to happen. I mean, granted, it is fun. I don't think people realize how fun it is. Like go off to a different part and like just fling an arrow at whatever. But I mean, you don't see many people leaving, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, and that's that's something to consider. Like if you're a guy that is hunting on a budget and you're trying to consider what your goals are, I think there are places that could meet everybody's goal. Like if you're in the South and you just want to shoot a decent buck, you absolutely can do that on public land, no doubt. But if your goal is to shoot something a lot bigger, you gotta start to consider and maybe forking over a little bit more money to be able to travel somewhere to the Midwest to try to do that. And then it's tough with your goals though, because you got also one of the things is how much am I going to get to hunt? And if I hunt a place that's 15, 16 hours away from home, how does that filter into your goals? Do you have 1 week in November? That's going to make it pretty tough. You're putting different pressure on yourself. All these things are stuff you have to consider when you're planning a hunt or considering a place to hunt. And you usually got to make these decisions 6-7 months in advance, especially if you're trying to, draw into a state like Kansas.
Okay. So let's I guess kind of get into this. Let's say you live in a southern state, whether that be Oklahoma, Alabama, Arkansas, something along those lines. And let's say your goal is to shoot 135, 140, right? Like that's the goal you want. Would you try to stick around your home state, or would you try to venture off to maybe Kansas or somewhere like that?
I hate even saying it like this, but I'd probably venture off. And I don't want to put any more pressure on Kansas than it already is on Kansas, but
damn you, Crispy.
I know there's not enough people listening for that, but no, I would probably venture somewhere in the Midwest, whether that be Kansas or Ohio. There's Kentucky. There's states in the Midwest that aren't draw. You know what I mean? And by the way, when you're hunt planning, you got to understand your budget. Maybe there's not a lot of folks that want to spend $600 to go to Kansas. There is a lot of people that do, but I think there's just as good opportunities other places. It really depends when you're planning your hunt, the proximity of where you live. Because if I lived in Northwest Arkansas, I'd be very interested in hunting Kansas because it's an hour and a half drive to hunt some pretty good stuff. Or But if I lived in southern Alabama and it's 15 hours to Kansas, I might be considering hunting somewhere else, like Tennessee, or there's a lot of different considerations that go into that. But if you're looking for a big buck, I just don't see I think your best opportunity is going to be somewhere in the Midwest, and that's something to consider. But you might not have the budget to do that, so that's another consideration.
So let's say someone picks up some extra side jobs, extra weekend jobs, something along those lines, to be able to pay the piper and hunt Kansas and draw in. Whereabouts would you try to figure out where you're wanting to go, right? Because you could, because the way Kansas is set up, or the way it was last year, I know they had some stupid rule changes, like no trail cameras and whatever else they snuck in along with that bill. We don't know, but where would you try to hunt? Would you try to base it on preference points? Would you try to save up, because it takes $100 bill each year just for the preference points? So would you try to save up those preference points, or would you go to one of the lower units that usually, if you're solo and you apply the first year, chances are you'll get in?
Yeah, I would ask myself, it would depend on the person, but if it depends on my experience. If I'm a guy and let's just say I've never shot a Pope and Young, and I want to shoot a Pope and Young. You can shoot a Pope and Young anywhere in Kansas, in any unit, no doubt. I would be going to the unit that took the least points, that was the closest to my house. Those would be my considerations, because one, that gives me the ability to hunt more often, and you're not going to learn if you're not hunting. You can e-scout your sack off, dude. It can be literally gone, and you can be no closer to killing a deer than you were before. Is that not true, though?
I had a bad thought. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Whenever you said your sack could be gone because you e-scout so much, I was about to say you could change your name to Bruce Jenner, but not going to go there.
You can. I mean, you can literally e-scout to death. And if you're not out there, anyone that's e-scouted and then went and hunted, how many times you walked in a spot and go, this sucks. This is not anything like what I thought it was.
A lot. Whenever we were by the more northeast unit we hunted last year, and you and I drove around to all those weehaws.
Yep.
How many did we go check out, and how many did we X off?
Oh, I think
simple math. Every single one of them.
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah. So there was that. Shoot, where were we going with that?
Well, what I was saying was, how would you make that decision? And I was just saying that I would pick the place that was the closest to my house with the least points, or if you're close to an over-the-counter state that is better than your state, I'd be picking an area that is close to my house that allows me to hunt the most. Because even going out for, I would take one day of actual hunting and driving around and scouting on the ground than 24 hours of e-scouting, because you can learn more just driving around and walking around in one day than you can, but you need proximity to do that. I don't know if you guys have been to the gas station recently, but gas is $3.50 a gallon where I'm at.
Changes every day, baby.
It seems like it changes the wrong direction every day, but that's something to consider. Most folks aren't going to have the funds to go around and drive 10 hours one way and then scout all day, drive 200 miles scouting and glassing and looking around, and do that for multiple days and then drive home. You might have just spent your budget for the freaking season going out there one time, because you can spend $400, $500, $600 easily in one weekend just scouting and driving around. So I'd rather pick a place that was maybe an hour and a half from my house. I could wake up on a Saturday morning early, go hunt, go scout, and get actual information that's going to help me as I progress towards the season. And by the way, especially in a lot of these Midwestern states, deer are killable in the early season in September when they're still hitting food and they're still going to bedding. So
100%. And going back to last season when we hunted Kansas, that is something that I took in strongly, and I'm going to use for next year when I put in for Kansas, because you and Peyton put in for a more northern unit, and because it's a more desired unit, supposed to have bigger deer. Well, I'm not probably going to put in with you and Peyton next year. I'm going to do what you just said, and I'm going to a spot that I know is good. That's only maybe an hour 15 to where I live, and I'm going to hunt that early season. And if I don't get it done by maybe the first week of October, then I'm probably not going to go back until December. And that's just what I'm going to do. because what we figured out and what we've learned kind of the hard way the last 2 seasons is, especially last year, what we tried to do, since we're like, okay, we spent all this money, spent all this time trying to hunt, figure out Kansas. We're going to go in November, and when it's supposed to be the best time of the year. Well, think about it from everybody else's perspective too. It ain't no secret that, the first 2 weeks in November are usually the time to get and go, and you're going to want to beat on a tree.
Dynamite.
Well, for the average person, they only get a certain time to be off.
maybe 1 week a year.
Yeah,
Like,
literally. And
if you take your family on vacation 1 week a year, you're going to get to hunt. If your wife's generous.
yeah. So with that being said, like, when are those blue collar people going to take off? They're going to want to take off and hunt, that $500 unit, $600 unit, during the best week that they think. Well, we figured out last year that November is not the time to really go to these areas because there's more human pressure, obviously, from what we just said. And so what we're doing now this year is staying home and going to either our best piece of public or our best private pieces. Most of the time, it's going to be our best private pieces when the rut's on full and heavy, because that's the best time of year. So why not be at your best spot instead of just trying to make the rut make you lucky? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think we get to hunt more than most people, I would say, and we can be a little bit more flexible, I think, in a lot of ways. But so if you are a guy that gets 1 week a year, and would I take that week off September 15th when it's 80 degrees to go try that off? Probably not. So if I am the kind of guy that only gets 1 week, November might be your jam. That might give you the best, but you just have to know what you're getting into on the front end.
It will, because I mean, we've seen a lot of deer. We've seen a lot of shootable bucks during that week.
And we shot a couple bucks. Me and Carol both shot a buck in Kansas doing that.
So, I mean, kind of like what you just said. I think you just kind of have to know what you're getting into. And with that being said, how to kind of position yourself to where maybe the human pressure isn't going to be as significant. It's going to be there. I can just tell you, we put on enough miles last year where we know the human pressure is going to be anywhere you can think of regardless. But what we learned to kind of help is to kind of stay away from those bigger cities within those units. So I'm not going to say any names to give away any units that we were in, but think of Kansas and think of some of the bigger surrounding towns within the units. If you have like a unit map pulled up, you kind of want to stay clear from that, because most of the people it's going to be taking time off. I mean, if it was me and I was wanting to relax, I'd hang around one of those towns that have a few different fast food joints,
amenities,
or maybe a hotel, motel, somewhere where you could sleep. That's where most of the pressure on the surrounding units or the surrounding public pieces are going to be. That's going to be pressured a little bit more heavy than, let's say, one of those towns that only have maybe a mom and pop store and a Casey's.
Yeah, and one of the things, like, you want to make it depending on your goals. If you're like we're saying, if you're a guy with 3 or 4 kids, maybe you do have to hunt within an hour of a city, just proximity, because you don't get, maybe that's your situation. Every situation is different. But I think the harder you can make it for other people and the harder you can make it for yourself, typically the better the hunting is going to be, because there's going to be less folks. Like if there's, let's just say you're hunting.
I was just going to give it a in-person example. So after our vacation in Oklahoma, that second week we went to Kansas and we hunted there. Where we first stayed in Kansas, I e-scouted a spot and it looked really good. It had, all these hard edges, different pieces of diversity. And I was like, I'm going here. Well, while I was going here, the first night, it was like a Thursday. So I assume not many people were, had got off work yet and headed down for the weekend. That first Thursday evening, I seen two bucks. One was definitely a shooter. One was just a low spike. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sit
Also,
here.
shoot.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
if it would have been the last day, maybe. But so I left all my stuff in the tree and went back. And obviously, I was going to come back out there the next morning. Well, as I was walking out there the next morning, as I'm walking out, I didn't know that people could come from the opposite way. And I seen truck lights come down this road that I was walking. I was like, you can drive down this? Because I was parking at like probably a mile back. And I was probably half a mile to 3/4 of a mile away from my truck. And I see truck lights come towards me. And then, he's probably another half a mile away from me, pulls off into the ditch, shuts off. And I'm thinking, okay, I have competition, but maybe he's going to a different set of fingers. So I turn off and go down this little tree line. And as I'm walking on the left side of this tree line, I see someone already in their stand with a headlamp on, probably 40, 50 yards away from me, flashing me with their headlamp. And I'm like,
I didn't know
brother,
this.
yeah. I was like, I mean, we didn't like make any verbal contact, but because we were too far away. And so what I try to do is make a big old, U shape around him. I try to get as far away as I can from him, like walking out in the field. And the whole time he was sitting there flashing at me. It's like, listen, all my stuff is already in the tree. Like maybe if all my stuff wasn't there, I would turn around and, not try to scare where you probably think the deers are going to come from. Yeah. But since all my stuff was there, I was going to sit. So just from that little walk, I had people coming in from the road and I had a light shining at me. And this wasn't a very big piece. So with that being said, I got out of there probably not that sit, but I sat there that morning, that evening, and then that evening walking back, I seen 2 more trucks parked there just because I got a bad A headlight lamp and I shined it across the field and I seen like two sets of headlights, reflecting back at me. But so with that being said, pressure's going to be there, but it's just trying to get away from it. And you could potentially, squeeze in, because if that 7-point would have been close enough, it could have been successful and it could have been a completely different experience. But, it kind of made that enjoyment factor go down just a little bit from, obviously getting shined at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think even one of the points I wrote was picking spots with isolation. So like if you pick a spot that it's kind of a roll of the dice, because you could go pick a spot that you haven't hunted before and it could be 50 minutes from where you're staying one way, and you drive out there and you hunt it. And if it's great, that's great. Now you got an issue getting to the spot because you're going to have to drive every single morning or stay there. But there's times where you got to think other people aren't going to want to do that either. So if you're staying 50 minutes, if you got a spot 50 minutes and it's the only spot out there, and you drive out there and hunt every day and it's really, really good, other people aren't going to want to make that 1.5 hour long trek one way. Because what are most people going to do during the day? They're going to want to get out of the stand at 10. They're going to want to go back, get some fast food, take a nap, or if it's the rep, maybe they're sitting all day. Most people aren't. But that's something to consider when picking a spot. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because on one hand, if you make it hard and isolate a spot, it's hard for you to get to it, but it's just as hard for other people to too. And that worked for me in Kansas last year. I was hunting a spot that was not very big, but
didn't even have any trees, really.
No. It looked like dog from a map perspective. But I went out there and it sucked to hunt, because by the time I got back to the place we were staying, you and Carol had been there for like 30 minutes or longer. But what I would do is I'd go out there and I'd hunt. I hunted one time in, I believe it was September, or it might have been early October, and I saw like 20 deer on one sit. And I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to keep hunting this spot. Hunted that spot again in November, only saw like a spike, moved to the other part of the property, pushing more towards some private and some ag, and shot a buck on the ground in there. But picking that spot was all about the isolation and how bad it sucked to get to, because nobody else was doing that either. And I never saw another truck on that place. In November, where I was walked up on 9 times, this spot was the only spot I didn't see somebody. And I fully believe that it was because no one else wanted to drive out there. Like unless you live near that property, it would suck to access. Mm-hmm. But sometimes if you have limited time, that's a good way to mitigate other people hunting there, is making it hard, which includes being hard for yourself. which sucks at times. But when you're sitting at home and you get 2 nights of sleep and that buck is sitting in your garage and you quartered it up and everything, you're like, okay, that was worth it. That was awesome.
I haven't felt that feeling in a pretty good while though.
Yeah.
That changes this year, baby. Here in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I think that's maybe that's not for everybody. You don't have to go hunt isolated to kill one, especially during the not during the hottest part of the year. Like if I'm not hunting the rut, I don't mind hunting near people because there's typically not going to be a lot of people out in
there's not
early October and September. I've been using the new Exodus Rival cell camera for the last couple months, and I have found a beautiful mainframe 8-point with tons of stickers to go after this fall.
Ooh.
One thing I do appreciate about Exodus trail cameras is all of the cameras share the same data plan, so you only pay for what you need. A lot of cell cam companies charge you for HD pictures. I've seen prices of $5 for 50 HD pics. Exodus is going to give you unlimited HD pictures right to your phone, which is awesome when you're sitting there in the middle of the summer and it's 100 degrees and you just want to binge a bunch of trail cam photos.
If you're looking for a solid cell camera with great performance and a 5-year no BS warranty, go check them out. So as we all know, hunting gear is something people can make way too complicated. Arrows can be the exact same way. Instead of going down all those rabbit holes, trying to sift through the endless information that's online and you're not really sure if it's right or wrong, Exodus makes it simple to get the right arrow for your exact setup.
So go online to the Exodus Arrow Builder. It takes less than a minute. You're going to enter your draw weight, your draw length, and how heavy of a point you're shooting. And it's going to be that simple. Let the guys at Exodus take care of the rest.
So if you're interested in Exodus Rival cell cameras or a new set of their MMT arrows, just go to exodusoutdoorgear.com and use code HA15 for 15% off anything on their website.
Once again, that is exodusoutdoorgear.com. Use code HA15 at checkout for 15% off. Now let's get back to the podcast.
How many people do we run into in September? And we hunted Kansas September almost every weekend.
I don't remember running into anybody. Do you?
I don't either. And then December, we only hunted December. Maybe I hunted it 4 times. But I didn't see a one.
It was funny when that ice storm came in and it was negative 28. How many people did you see out?
None.
0.
But the thing is even when the weather wasn't that bad, like, yeah, it was a little warm in September. We seen just as many deer in September than we did in November.
Oh yeah. I'd argue probably more.
Yeah. Now quality wasn't there, obviously, but I mean, one should have died. 140 incher should have died easily. Twice.
Yeah. He got blessed.
Yeah.
I guess he was one of the cats with 9 lives because 2 of his lives are gone because he should have got shot twice.
He's walking around with 7 now, but that's for a later podcast.
Later pod.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else goes into hunt planning. Like, I think it's really important to know your goals, what you want to do, because you don't want to be unrealistic in your goals.
I was just going to say that's a very good thing, because that's kind of what we got roped into our first year hunting the Midwest is not shooting what makes you happy, is shooting what you think you need to shoot for that place. Yeah. The hype train took us too far and we didn't, get off at our shop.
Explain that. Like and someone could probably go back on the podcast in last summer and be like, all right, 140 or bust in Kansas, and probably make us eat some crow. But what was up with that?
So, I mean, we just like I said, we got on the hype train and we got off at not our stop. You know what I mean? So in September, was it September or October? It was one of the two. I think it was October. I had an encounter with
no, it was September.
Was it September?
Jake and his dad.
I knew it was early. Yeah, I knew it was early. That's right. So yeah, it was in September sometime. Super early in the season. And I found this spot just because all of our other spots were like, we're just trying new spots basically, because we only had one truck and we had to hunt somewhere close to each other without having to drive for 3 hours at a time. Just for one hunt. And so you hunted that spot right across from that big water source where I was hunting, and I had to walk around. There is a I don't know, maybe 120, 125, maybe inch deer that
But before you get into that, what was our goal, Kansas? Like we were saying, like 140
yeah, we're saying 140, and we're bigger because
on
if we
public
wanted to
land
shoot,
with a bow.
yeah, because if we wanted to shoot a 120, like we could do that on private in Oklahoma if we wanted to. Like we
Right.
were being super
Greedy.
we were being dumb. Yeah, that's
Greedy is the
perfect
word.
words. Yeah, we're being super greedy. So that's our thinking. Like if we wanted a 120, we could do that on either of our private pieces if we wanted to. Sounds super. Dude, I got one gnat in here that's been flying around. Anyways, so a 120, maybe 125-ish, if depending on how his eye guard scored, but good buck. I was, when I first seen him, I seen him like one evening. I went out there, hunted the bean field, and didn't really get a shot at him because I was actually going to shoot this deer, but just the Lord said not today, because it kind of fooled me. He came walking out, and I immediately was like, yes, grab my bow, got clipped on, and all of a sudden he stopped. It's just like he's probably 35 yards. It's just his head with his back hoof, and I was like, okay, I got time to zoom in the camera nice and good because he's walking kind of slow. Well, as soon as he itched his spot on his face, he was just walking it with a good pace, and I was like, oh. Long story short, wasn't able to get a shot at him because I was trying to range him too, and he was walking at a good place. I don't want to stop him, range him, and then try to draw back. So I let him, walk, and watched him out in that bean field for probably 30, 45 minutes. And then when the sun started setting, the wind shift blew my scent into that bean field. He smelled me, didn't really know what was going on, but him and a few other deer kind of put their tails up and ran across the field out of my life. So I decided, we were there like a full weekend or extended weekend or something. I decided to hunt another spot that next evening or morning, and then, I think I took a day and let that place rest. Came back there the following day after the break, same exact spot, same exact, sit, an evening sit. And I told myself, I was like, I'm not going to shoot it because that night after the first encounter, we get back to Jake's, and I'm showing you all the video, showing you all the footage. I'm thinking like I'm kicking myself for not like just trying to fling an arrow at it. I'm kicking myself.
Mm-hmm.
And Jake's over here. Jake Ayers is seeing like 150-inch deer that he passed up, and he's like,
situation,
dude,
but yes,
yeah, completely different situation. And he showed me footage of that, and he's like, yeah, I passed this, willingly, yada yada yada. Not being any type of way about it, but that's just the way he is. He has a very high standard. And so I'm thinking, man, I'm really kicking myself over 120-inch deer when Jake's passing an easy 140. And so I'm like, I just need to get out of my own head. And so going into that hunt, I figured I was going to see that deer again, just because the way he ran off, he wasn't like, didn't know what was going on. So I was thinking, I'm like, I might see that deer again. Well, lo and behold, the next time I hunted it, he comes strolling out. It was like 41, 42 yards maybe, but people might say, oh, it's kind of a poke. No, that's like on my private pieces. That's what I set my corn feeders at, is 40, 45 yards. Yeah, because all these deer have schizophrenia. And so I have to be a little bit further back if I even want to draw back. So 40, 45 is like at the time my wheelhouse. Probably not now, but regardless. So he's out there, and boy, when I say he's just has no place to be, he's just strutting out there. It's like God said, okay, you wanted this opportunity. Here you go.
Here's your shot.
Yep. And he went out there. He was stretched out, broadside, eating beans, just munching. He even strolls out there, stops perfectly. I range him 3 or 4 times, 41, 42. I have all day. And I tell myself, I'm not shooting that deer. Why? Because I was basing it off someone else's expectations, not my own. Was I excited to see that deer? I was shaking because I was like, but Kansas, this isn't the type of deer people think about when you hunt Kansas. If I was to shoot that deer, would I mounted it? Yeah, I would have mounted it. But hey, that's my Kansas buck. People's not going to be like, you shot that in Kansas. But yeah. And so long story short, I passed it, and thinking I would have a better opportunity on down the line, and never did. That was the one that was the best shot opportunity I would have had at a buck that I wouldn't have mind putting my tag around. So that's that's a pretty good example of not
how goals can kick you in the sack.
Exactly. And you kind of had the same experience though too.
Yeah, I went and hunted. I took Lauren up and hunted once in, I think it was like October 7th. It was the weekend. We drove up, we brought our dog, got a hotel, and we just were going to hang out and hunt. And so we went and did a hang and hunt on some public land. And I had a really good hunt. I had like 6 bucks come in. And granted, like 5 of them were 50 inches and below, but still $6 either way.
Could have identified as a doe.
Yeah. No, but I had probably very similar, probably 125-inch buck come in to 20 yards, and he was standing there, and he was quartering to me just a little bit, and I was shooting an expandable at the time, or had that arrow on at least, and I pulled back, and I could see my pin on him, but it was kind of one of those situations where we're starting to get a little bit fuzzy, and I was like, okay, I can shoot this deer. Like, he's not exactly what we're going for. And since the situation wasn't perfect, like he wasn't quartered the perfect, and it was just a little bit dark, I was like, okay, I'm not going to like push it on a deer like this. And so when in reality, I probably could have killed that deer and probably should have, but I let that deer walk. And because we had the goals like of 140-inch buck on public, that was the goal. And was that a bad goal? No, probably not.
I don't think so.
But I think it's a goal you hold loosely. Like, I'd like to, in an ideal world, I would do this, but for a person who's never shot a deer in Kansas or had never shot a deer in Kansas, what's wrong with going up and shooting a 125-inch buck? With a bow on public land? Absolutely nothing's wrong with that.
That's the thing. I mean, did we scout Kansas? Yes. But the thing is like everywhere we scouted, preseason, we didn't hunt just because of the human pressure drove us to other places. And so we were basically going in, hanging and hunting and just like trying our best. And still yet going in, hanging and hunting, and a 120, 125-inch deer wasn't good enough. Like, come on now. Like we were idiots.
But that's the thing though, is that's what stopped those deer from being unalived was the goals before the season. That's why it's important when you're planning a hunt to be realistic. Like, and you can always change your mind if you go out there and you say, I'm just saying, don't set the bar too high. If you're trying to have fun, if you're a diehard and you killed 8 Boone and Crockett's, like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't shoot 120 on public land. Probably not. But if you're a young person like us, like you're under 40 and you haven't shot, your wall's just not overflowing with Pope and Youngs, I would be sitting out there and I'd be like, okay, I want to shoot a 125 or better. If a 150 comes in, I'm absolutely going to pop it. But if a 125 comes in, I'm going to shoot it too. And be happy with that. You can progress and move up every single year, but you can really go wrong in the beginning if you set your goals too high. And I'm not telling people not to set goals high. It's different for every person, and every person's situation is different. Everybody has a different budget. Everybody has different time off. Everybody has different resources. I'm just saying, don't be greedy. Don't set them to the point of being greedy, because that bit us in the butt.
Shoot for the moon, aim for the stars, baby.
Land on the
Yeah. You know what I mean.
Yeah. So that's what I say about goals. Hold them,
but also
they're fun.
Also, kind of like Don Higgins told us, don't set your goals too loosely either, because God has a bigger plan.
It's funny.
I know we're contradicting ourselves, but
he said that, but he also was like, he's like, God's reality is bigger than anything you ever imagine. I'm like 100%. And then he said, when we were talking about holding out for 150, he's like, you got to take it one step at a time.
Yeah. But that is good, because if God, this is the way I look at it though, kind of like what you just said. If God's reality is bigger than what you ever could think. But if that's the case, that 160 is going to walk out before that 120. If that's the case, so therefore shoot whatever walks in first. That's what I'll say.
Let His will be done.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about a little bit different side of hunt planning, and I think this is probably just as much of a thing to consider as the actual hunting and picking of a state is budgeting. Let's talk about budgeting first.
Man, you want to talk about that green stuff?
I don't have much of it, so we might as well talk about it. Maybe I can manifest some more to come into my life. I think this is a big point when picking a state is like you have to
100%.
consider what is it going to cost me to hunt this state, whether that's proximity, like how far away is it, how much is it going to cost me to get there, and then also if you're going to be hunting a place with points, how much is it going to cost me versus how many points am I going to have to draw out? Like people ask me every year, are you putting in for Iowa? No, not currently. I'm not currently putting in for Iowa because I know it's going to take 6 points to draw the place, and I don't even know how much a preference point is. That's hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And so for me, I'm like, I would rather hunt a place like Kansas where I know the draw is a little bit easier to get into, similar price probably for a tag, and better proximity. So that's something to consider when you're hunting a place is the budget and the points.
I mean, for the most part, like all the border states is over the counter, like Missouri over the counter, Arkansas, I believe, is over the counter. The only one that's not is like Kansas, but I mean that's the deer hunting states. Like you could go to New Mexico, I guess, maybe if they have even whitetails or not. Yeah, I don't know. Regardless, the honey hole states, the Midwest, all that crap, or the bordering. Yeah, that's been my go-to.
I think most people are in that boat.
I just don't have many. I mean, I don't put in many places due to funds. Like, would I like to hunt antelope in Wyoming? Sure. Would I like to get preference points? Yeah, but I don't. The only place I have points in right now is Oklahoma, just because I'm a resident, and to get a point, it's like $5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and some people are in. I'd say a lot of people are in that same boat. So maybe for the more budget conscious folks, I think there's still a good amount of options that don't require you to do points, don't require you to put in year after year. And I also like to know where I'm going to be hunting. I like to be able to plan.
Yeah.
Like, I'm for sure going to be hunting here because I can buy a tag.
I'm with you on that because next year I know next year I'm for sure putting in for Kansas, and because I'm putting in as a solo, unless you guys change your mind, I mean, more than likely I'm going to draw out, especially for the unit that I'm picking. So I plan on that, but for the most part, like where I'm at, like right now in my hunting journey, I don't really care to like, would I like to? Sure, I'd like to, but I don't really care to like yet to go to Ohio or Iowa or anything like that first. I'm not done with Oklahoma. I may never be done with Oklahoma because I love where we hunt. I love my private piece where I hunt. I love the public piece where we spend a lot of time at. I mean, I'm in love with our current situation right now. It's going to take either me losing my private or something like that to venture off. And like last year, I didn't fill my tag for Kansas, and so I have a vengeance going right there. I want to finish what I started, last year, and I want to X that off my list first before I venture off anywhere else. And so right now, that's kind of where I'm at. Is I'm content with the bordering states right now, and then after I kill one in Kansas, I might be like, okay, time for Missouri, and then just gradually work my way across the map doing that.
And I think that's a pretty good plan. And I think that's a pretty sustainable plan for most folks, unless you live in Texas, because you're 8 hours away from any state. But
That's true.
If you live anywhere in the South or the Midwest, like, or you live in a $1 state, it'd be so easy to just run to the next state, go to the next one, and hunt. Like within a couple of hours, you'll probably be hunting. So that's a consideration. Another portion of the budgeting aspect of the hunt planning is camping and food, which have we done full episodes about camping?
Have we did any full camping podcasts? I don't know. I know we touched on it a lot, but like, I know we're pretty good at budget camping though, because we've gotten good and then we've gotten a little bit better. Because before, how we did things is, I remember the first full year we went like, which if you're a longtime listener, you've heard these stories before, but I know the first full year where we're like, okay, we're going to go hard as crap on this piece of public. We literally trucked it the whole entire summer, the whole entire season. And what we would do is, since we already have to drive 2 vehicles, since you live in Texas, I live in top portion of Oklahoma. I'm not gonna swing down to Texas, pick you up. You're not gonna swing up to Oklahoma, pick me up, and then we're gonna go to the public. No, we're gonna meet there. So we had 2 trucks there. One would be a living truck where we camped and slept. The other one would be where everything we got messy, like that would be our run and gun scouting, go hang cameras, do all that stuff. And that's just the way we did. So we basically had a home truck and then a hunting truck. And that's what we did for one season. And then after that, we switched to a tent, I believe. And then after that, we went and upgraded to a wall tent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we did. And then even from the solo perspective, I got a camper shell, which is pretty nice for when you're running, just going by yourself, or hell, even one guy, even two guys could do the camper shell thing. But I like what we've done and the progression we've had from the camping aspect, because hotels are nice to take a shower, but the reality is you're probably hunting for a week and you can do without a shower. You really can.
I feel like that's most people's current situation, right? Like, I don't think so. The only time we set up the wall tent is for extended stays. Maybe that's an extended weekend. Maybe that's for a full week, maybe a week and a half. But if it's just a Friday night, Saturday, and then come home Sunday, we're probably not setting up the wall tent, just because the one we have is traditional style and it's harder to set up and it takes a lot more room in the bed of the trucks and stuff. So that's for a long-term situation. And we got to the point where it's like we'd rather sleep in our back seats than just a regular pop-up tent, just for comfortability, and you're out of the elements a little bit better as well. But for the most part, I feel like that's everybody's current situation. Like, besides like the wall tent, like, this is what people can do. This is more relatable. Like, could you set up a tent? Yeah, tent's like $50, or you could just drive there and throw all your crap in the bed of your truck. Maybe throw a tarp over it, or if you have a bed cover, slide that thing down where if it rains or dews or anything, your clothes ain't going to be wet. Crash in your back seat, or if you don't have a bed cover or a tarp, throw everything in your back seat and kick your driver's side or passenger seat back and sleep there. Like, it's temporary. It doesn't have to be comfortable. It just has to work.
Yeah, and I was gonna add something on that. A good example of this is when we were in Nebraska, almost 2 weeks ago now. Dude, a 2-star motel, 2-star in the middle of Nebraska, not a hotel, a motel, where people are outside on their Gary Coleman cooking in the bed of their truck.
Hell yeah.
Not that people that stay at those places are the scum of the earth, because they're not. I was staying there. I don't consider myself the scum, but the sketchy spots, these really sketchy, nasty hotels, $85 a night.
Screw that.
Screw that. $5 a night. And so you think about it, how can you justify, you're like, okay, I'm going to go hunting for a weekend and it's going to cost me, I'm going to get there on Friday night, Saturday night. I'm going to add almost $200 of expenses right on the top just to hunt a weekend. Imagine if you go for a week. You're talking $500-$600 to stay at a piece of crap motel, one bed.
Ain't gonna happen.
That's a one bed, by the way. You get the same AC, but turning your truck on for 10 minutes. I mean,
another thing about those is like, I don't really like motels or even good hotels for that reason. Because like, if you find a hair there, it's like, is that my hair? Or is that someone else's hair? Did they change these sheets? Like,
probably not.
Is that just a like a missing paint on the wall, or is that someone's dried up booger that they wiped? Like, I don't mind filth, but as long as it's my filth. Does that make sense? And so I get a lot. Yeah, it's comfortable. I get a lot. Like, I'm a little bit of a germaphobe too, probably, but I get a lot better sleep, where I would get a lot better sleep in my own truck in my own back seat, rather than I would get better sleep in my truck than I would like a nasty, grody motel room. And that's 100%.
Here's another consideration about, sleeping actually closer to where you're hunting is time in the morning. When you're at a motel, you're probably adding 20 minutes one way to your trip. So you got to think about that. Going out in the morning is 20 minutes. Coming back for lunch is 20 minutes. Going out in the evening is 20 minutes. Coming back in the evening is 20 minutes. So you're talking about multiple hours that you're adding a day just by commuting. Whereas it is so nice. It's so nice to just come back after a hunt and be like, all right, I'm going to camp. We're going to camp. We eat. You can take a nap. You can do whatever, and actually just go out. You have a better launching point, and that's going to make the trip a lot better in the long term because just the closer you are and the more time you can eliminate doing driving and stuff like that, the more fun you're going to have.
The only downside to like camping and sleeping in your truck is the shower perspective of it.
Right.
But that's honestly, if it's a weekend thing, that's not even a big issue. Like, I mean, you can't go 2 days without showering. I would do that on the regular if Abby would let me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can get away with it for a week, but if it's, or I'm sorry, a weekend, but if it's like a week-long thing, that's where it kind of gets like, you know, you're walking back after an evening sit and you're just like, I just want a damn shower. I want a shower and something that's not a sandwich. That's when it gets to be a lot.
And you can, like most places, you can drive within 30 minutes and find a shower, whether it's
that be like a
state
truck stop or
park or a
something.
truck stop, or there's typically somewhere that you can take a shower, and
Right.
that'll change your whole mindset for the week. Like day 3, you take a shower, you're like, all right, I'm ready to go for another week.
Yeah.
Yeah. You feel good. So, and all this stuff is what you consider on the front end. It all has to do with the planning on the front end. Where am I going to take a shower? Where can I take a shower? If it rains for 4 days straight and I'm soaking wet and my boots are wet, where can I go to a hotel to dry off? Is there a laundromat? And is there a town that has a place to eat? Is there a place to get gas? Like, those are just all the considerations. And that's after you pick the place that you want to hunt. So although, you know, having a place to get food or to get gas or take a shower, yeah, those don't kill deer, but they keep you out there. They do keep you out there. And if you go home, you for sure ain't going to kill one. So there's things to consider on the front end.
Yeah, I would say that. Are you wanting to talk about groceries and stuff on the next one, or? I think that'd go good here.
Yeah.
Or did we already kind of beat that?
We can let's briefly touch on it.
Yeah. One last little tidbit though, when we're talking about being super budget friendly, would definitely be A, the cameras, and then B, your food budget, because you and I both know from last year in Kansas, there's Casey's gas stations everywhere. And I know there's a lot of people that say, oh, Casey's is good. Well, you're wrong. And that's just plain and simple. Because I've had everything, probably not everything, but all the hot food you can get there, I've had and I've tried. Like even their breakfast pizza at 11:30 a.m. Like probably not good to eat, but I've eaten it anyways. Not only is it bad for you and it makes you feel like crap like 3 days later, it's also pretty pricey if you keep doing it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Oh, dude. You can rack up $100 in a weekend eating at a gas station.
There was times last year. Yes.
Energy drink, that's $3 or $4. Snack for later in the stand.
Exactly.
Breakfast. Dude, it's nuts.
Yeah, I remember last year, it was after a morning sit, we ran through Casey's and I spent $18. I got an energy drink, I got a slice or two of pizza, and then I seen those they're like little tater tot, they're like cheddar bites.
Yeah.
And I got those $18. I could have ate a good Mexican restaurant for damn near $18. And that was just one meal, and I wasn't even full after that. I was just pissed.
I was full on dissatisfaction.
Exactly. So I think it's best to if it's like a weekend trip, load up an ice chest full of, bologna meat and some of that good American cheese. And everybody loves white bread, but grab wheat bread since it's better for you, and go from there. I know you disagree, but
yeah. And then for the longer extended trips, what we spent last year, I think under $300 at Costco, and we were at the end of the week, we're still like, all right, who wants half this food?
No, literally, it was a 2-week trip, and I'm pretty sure it was like $102 or $105 a piece.
And we got
between 3 people,
like dozens of bags of chips, like so much meat. Like I think we got 40 or 50 energy drinks.
We didn't starve nor thirst.
No. It was It was great. Like buying stuff in bulk, and especially stuff that you know that you're going to eat every weekend. If you're like I love Sun Chips. So if you know you love Sun Chips, go to Costco and buy like a 54 pack and take some of them every weekend. I guarantee you it's more cost effective than buying them at the gas station. They're probably like $4 a pack at the gas station or something. So, and you gotta, if you want to keep doing this stuff, and you like, I would rather be more cost effective and be able to hunt more than get to go and like have the prima donna awesome experience one time. Like I'd rather be able to hunt 6 weekends instead of 1 week trip where I get to go stay in a nice hotel and get to hunt a super nice. I'd rather get to hunt more. And
so if you're saying you'll take quantity over quality.
Yeah. Because the hunting's going to be the same regardless. Like
that is true.
The hunting's the same. The only thing is different is how I feel, is my experience.
That is true.
So
it's a good point.
That's just how I think about it.
No, I like that. Another thing when we're on the budget topic is cameras. So how many cameras do we have right now? Like 25 non-cell cams?
20. Yeah.
So let's just say 22. At least 22 that's working. How we go about that is Facebook Marketplace. Do you want to kind of touch on that?
Mm-hmm. It's typically the end of the season that we do that, like spring.
Yeah, spring, summer. Just, I mean, at least I look at Facebook Marketplace daily just for good deals and stuff, you know. So, yeah. I mean, whenever really.
Well, sometime after the season, or heck, maybe even during the season, just checking Facebook Marketplace for miscellaneous cameras. I mean, you're probably not going to get the matching spy. I almost said Spy Point. Like that's a good camera or something. You're not going to get all matching cameras. Yeah. Stealth cam. You're not going to find 10 of those SD cameras for $100 on Facebook. But what you can find is these miscellaneous bags of like 1 Chinese camera, 2 wild game cameras, 1 Bushnell, like, and you'll typically find like a bundle of 3, 4, 5 of those for like less than $100. And that's like $20 a camera. I think our average across all our cameras probably like 20 or $30.
Oh, I was going to say 15.
Maybe, yeah, heck, maybe even less. And
I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
there was one deal that I made. It was 2 wild game. I don't know if they're Terra 8s or 10s. There was 2 stealth cams, pretty good stealth cams too. You know which ones I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think a big bricky one that I don't remember if it works or not, but it was like $80. And I know for sure those stealth. Yeah, and I know for sure those stealth cams were a good $45 a piece, easily. So just that, and then the Terra 8s or 10s on the wild games, I know they're like probably $35-$40 on Amazon. So just saying,
that's the way to do it.
Good bargains.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to do it. Because in a world of like gear where people are like, "Oh no, I only run muddies. I love muddies." You know, it's okay. Do you want 3 muddies, or do you want 10 piece of craps that will still get the job done and give you more intel? That's just how we do it. Like you don't have to do it that way. But here's what I've realized: when the deer's on the wall, they don't care if the picture was taken with a muddy or a wild game
or a 16 megapixel versus a 32. It doesn't matter.
It's different on private. I like good, reliable cell cams on private, but when we're on public, man, budget just enough to get it done. That's the way we do it. And I don't know. It's worked for us. Heck, you probably heard a lot more opportunity than you have kills on this podcast so far, but we're gonna work on that part.
All we can do is try.
Yeah. So
you got anything else?
No, I think that basically wraps it up for hunt planning. If you guys enjoyed the episode, make sure to leave us a rating and review, and come check us out next week, where we're going to be talking about on the next episode, scouting. And that's going to include e-scouting and boots on the ground. So hopefully this public land series is going to be a good one. I think we're off to a good start.
I like it.
All right. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Jesus loves you.
Bye. Thank you guys so much for checking out the Hunter's Advantage podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to the podcast. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in the next episode.